All right, thank you all for coming. This is what game hacking teaches us about offensive security and red teaming. We'll be talking about game hacking, this for the Game Hacking Village for DEF CON 33. So first of all, a disclaimer. I don't condone cheating in games, especially not online or competitive games. I think cheating's really unfair, but I think what game hacking teaches you is really interesting. It's really technically deep, and it has a lot of parallels, especially with malware. And that's a little bit about what we will be talking about today. And yeah, cheaters cheaters are usually bad at the game. It's a skill issue. Get good. So a little bit about myself. My day job, I'm a security researcher. I primarily look at mobile applications and do application security in that way. I've done a variety of different security things as well, so not just mobile applications, but growing up did a lot of CTFs and things, and I do API security and backend security and many different things. In college, I worked in a malware lab, so I have a little bit of experience in malware, and that's kind of where the intersection of this comes in on this talk. And then, yeah, I really enjoyed playing competitive games growing up. Legitimately, I think you learn a lot from learning how to get good at a game, and cheating is just, it ruins the fun of it, I think. And it's really frustrating to play against. So this talk, we're going to be talking about what game hacking is, and then we're going to talk about different types of cheats. We'll talk a little bit about hardware cheats as well, and the ways in which they can be detected. Sorry, I don't have my notes in front of me, so I have to keep looking at my phone here. So what is game hacking? Game hacking is not just game cheating. There's a variety of things that game hacking includes, and that could be modding, it could be speedrunning. They often abuse like the way that the game is in there. So it's a broad definition of what we're including in game hacking here. Reverse engineering is a part of it, and that's part of like what may be done for like game preservation, modding, and things like that. So, and yes, finally cheating. That's part of what we talk about with game hacking, and also what we're going to be talking about primarily in this talk. So game cheating. If you've seen cheats before, they kind of look like this. You have three different games here. Counter-Strike is at the top right. At the bottom right, we have Fortnite, and then at the bottom left, we have Escape from Tarkov. These are all FPS games, and in FPS games, I feel like cheating is one of the biggest problems because it has a much higher skill ceiling to it. So a little bit of information goes a really long way in these sorts of games, especially Escape from Tarkov, where it's a really hardcore game. And cheats can include things like aim hacks and wall hacks and radar hacks that tell you where players are. Those are kind of like the read-only type ones versus ones that write, which is like aim hacks, where it can like modify where your crosshair is and shoot the person for you. And then just zooming in on one of them, the actual game doesn't have any borders around these players. The cheat is adding the borders around the players so that you know where they are through the wall. And that's a classic wall hack, or also known as ESP. So game hacking is kind of in two pieces. One of them is the software, and one of them is how you actually run the cheats. In this screenshot here is a really thorough game hack. It's about 30,000 lines of code. It's for Counter-Strike, and it includes all the hacks that we talked about. Customizations, configurations, you can change the color, you can modify your in-game skins and aesthetics and things like that. And it's just a normal piece of software, right? It's basically a mod for the game. So there's, yeah, as I was saying, there's two parts for the cheat. There's the actual cheat itself, the software, but then there's how you run the cheat and install it. And that's what I find most interesting. It's not just like how you do the spin bots and things like that. That's more or less the same for each game. The real difficult part is how you create a cheat that's hard to be detected and hard to be evaded, and that's the part that's constantly changing. It's not the part that's not constantly changing is the spin bots and hacks. Those have been around a long time. It's how you install those and run those. So there's two types of cheats. There's internal and external cheats. An internal cheat is one that's basically like a mod for the game. You load your code into the game, and it becomes kind of part of the game as long as the game is running, and your cheat goes away, and it just is part of it. You're installing it basically in active memory. Versus an external cheat is one that's interacted with indirectly. Now that could be from a hardware device, which is the most common external cheat nowadays, or if you've used something like Cheat Engine before. Cheat Engine is an external cheat that is a separate process that interacts with the game to make changes to it and read and write memory. Yeah, so getting into the details of it, an internal cheat shown here, we have a cheat loader, so two components, a cheat, the code that we looked at earlier in that screenshot we'll reference back a couple times to, or I'll reference to it. And then your software, that's the cheat loader. So the cheat loader is responsible for putting your cheat into the game. So you want your cheats in the game, you need to load them. And that's with an internal cheat. So a little bit more of a technical diagram. You have your cheats in your process, and you're trying to load it into the game process. And then after that, your cheat process goes away, and your game is now pretty much modded with that. And then next we have, oh yes. So if you're familiar with malware, you might look at this and be like, this is kind of like process migration. So this is the first comparison we're drawing to some malware. Process migration is a way in which malware moves from one process to another. So if you are running maybe an exploit on like a vulnerable Microsoft SharePoint server, that was in recent news, and you start executing your malicious code, you want to probably hide on a more stable process, one that's not going to be updated soon, and one that's maybe a little bit longer running. So you could attach to some of the process on the system and move your code under there so that you don't have to run your own process. Instead, you hide under the guise of another process. And that's pretty much the same thing cheats are doing, is we're hiding under another process. Yeah, so now bring that to malware still. Here we have Clippy being infected with some malware, and evil Clippy. Or, I mean, he could be a little bit stoned too, I don't know. So the point is, cheats use the same techniques as malware, and they have many of the same characteristics. Stealth is goal. Malware is trying to hide from anti-malware or like enterprise EDRs. They're technically sophisticated, so because it's a cat and mouse game, the techniques you have to evolve have gotten more and more advanced, and they build on top of each other. So you're adding levels of obfuscation on top of different techniques that you're combining in various ways, and you're using undocumented APIs and just doing things that are just barely possible to try and avoid detection and do something unique. You're avoiding, you're obfuscating it, as I said, and you're also employing oftentimes anti-debugging and anti-analysis and anti-debugging. So cheat developers, they're selling a product. They don't want they don't want people using their product for free. They don't want the game developer figuring out how their product works. Malware doesn't want to be detected. They don't want malware analysts spending their time looking at it, and they're going to waste a lot of their time by adding these mechanisms in there. So we're going to go to external cheats now. We were talking about internal cheats before. An external cheat is one that's in a separate process or in a separate area outside of the game itself. We'll talk about how it's not always a process. And in this case, we have, this is most similar to Cheat Engine if you've used that, where you have another process that's directly interacting with your game and making changes to the memory, reading and writing to it. Notably, they both exist at the same time. So when your cheat disappears, all the code for it disappears, and the game remains strictly intact. Where this is most useful, we're drawing another comparison to some malware. So if you have done red teaming before, you've probably heard of Mimikatz. Mimikatz is a program that employs pretty much this external cheat kind of concept to Windows. So Mimikatz is a tool that pulls passwords from the LSASS process on Windows, which is responsible for logins, and it does so by pretty much externally asking Windows to access the memory of that process and read out values in it. Nowadays, this is prevented. Microsoft has smartened up to this technique to improve their operating system security by making it so that you can't just do this, but it's only protecting like system processes and such. And there are ways in which you can run your game in a similar manner where it's a lot harder to just directly read values from it, and then there are more ways to go and bypass it, as we'll find out. So they're not so different after all. They use the same Windows APIs that malicious applications use, cheats and malware. And these are all APIs provided by Windows, so it's not weird to be able to open another process and read and write memory. Those are provided functions of the operating system. There are sometimes legitimate uses for it, although these are like most oftenly abused by processes. So just malware and cheats abuse the same kind of otherwise legitimate functions. As that says, yeah. Oh, and then, yeah, there are products that are created, such as EDRs and anti-malware, to make it more difficult to abuse the API, and so they'll monitor these uses of the API and try and find malware using it. So another part of external hacking that we talked about is direct memory access. So one of the reasons it's really hard to detect cheaters in games is because you can spend a lot of money and have an external hardware device that will allow you to read the game memory and do so in a mostly undetected manner. Right here we have, this is called a screaming squirrel. So it's a PCIe device that plugs into your computer next to your graphics card, or like below it on the same lane. So if you built your own computer before, you've probably seen that. And you can plug in here, and then on here you have USB-Cs. So you will plug this into your computer, and then you will plug another computer into this card. And now this computer can go into this card and then access the memory of your main computer. So you will then implement your hacks on the external computer, and the only thing this computer can see is whether or not you plug this card in. And this card is going to pretend that it's a Wi-Fi card or Bluetooth card or whatever else, or just like a USB-C thing. It's not going to say, hey, I'm an external like cheat thing. So now how do you implement the hacks? Because now you're on a different computer. So there's a couple things. So you'll have your computer plugged in normally like this. But when you want to have a way to display like where enemies are, you're going to use what's called a fuser. So now that you're able to read all the memory from the computer, you'll set up your cheat in a way where you can figure out where the players are on the map, and there's an API that's provided for the screaming squirrel that will allow you to read the process memory of a game, and then you implement your cheats to figure out, to tell it where to find like the player locations and such, and then you go and write more code to render that out onto a screen. So it'll be like the outlines of the characters, and then put that over a black screen. You then, instead of having your computer plugged in directly, you're now plugged into this fuser, and it will combine those two inputs and then output to your screen. So if you're a streamer, if you were to be recording your gameplay, it would be recording the output of your graphics card, which is completely legitimate and will not be seen at all. And once it goes through the fuser, that's all outside the computer. That can't be seen by the computer. It can't be detected. And if you're a streamer, like that's not shown at all. Then we need a way to do inputs as well. So the way we would do inputs is you could directly write to the memory. So you could just have the game change the location of where your crosshair is pointing and such. But it's a little bit more stealthy to do so another way. You take your mouse and you plug it into this is, I think, an actual product, but you take your mouse and you plug it into a box, and then the box can make corrections at the last minute to change your mouse input just enough. And then again, all the computer sees is that you're just using a mouse. So the computer sees that you're using some Bluetooth device, in quotes, and just a regular mouse. And how are you going to detect that, really? That's one part that's a little bit different. That's one part. Ooh, AV, hello. Okay. Would this work better? Okay. Yeah, that's one part that's a little bit different than malware. Malware, you're usually accessing a remote computer rather than a computer that's like you have physical access to. So that's why cheating is a lot harder of a problem to solve, because you have physical access to the computer, and with that, there's a lot more that you can do. So we've talked about different types of cheats and how malware relates to them, and also how it's really hard to detect cheating. access injection technique, and then we also talked about the hardware device and how it's really hard to detect cheats. We talked about anti-cheats and EDRs and kind of how they relate to each other and have a similar mission. And then the last part is some red teamer takeaways. So because game hacking is so familiar, similar, I've talked to a lot of people in offensive security and some red teamers as well that are doing more technical things that have used anti-cheat forums to learn a lot about the game, to learn a lot about the Windows API. And because it's even though they're like cheater forums and hacker forums, they have very like well-written, structured examples, comments, and threads of people asking for more information and such. So it's actually really well-documented code. They are employing the same kinds of things that malware is, so different tooling exists. Not all of that might be used by malware at the moment, so there might be new techniques that game cheaters create. I think it kind of goes both ways. Malware developers will create new techniques and cheaters will use it, and cheaters I think sometimes create new techniques as well that malware is later used, and I think there are examples of that. So to answer the question of my talk is what can game hacking teach us about offensive security and red teaming? I think that they're just two different sides of the same coin, and they can teach you pretty much the same. So, thank you. Oh yeah. So we got some time for questions. Yes. So yeah, the question was talk about kernel anti-cheats a little bit, and is it actually necessary? As as a gamer, kind of, I'd say yes. There is kind of a dispute of so this is like a controversial topic, both for EDRs as well. But yeah, there is some controversy over whether or not it's fair to have kernel level anti-cheats because it's basically full access to your system. I'd say that even like admin level access anti-cheats have a similar level of access to like all the files and privacy things that you would be concerned about. For games specifically, the only way I think there's even a chance to detect cheaters, besides like AI and some things like that, is to have a kernel anti-cheat. Now, whether or not you trust it, it's up to you. Me personally, I have a separate computer that I use just for gaming, and I don't try not to do anything personal on that computer, and I use it just for gaming, just because you're running software from different game developers, different countries, and such. Does that kind of answer your question?
Thank you.
Green shirt? So was the question, do you think cheaters move faster? Or? Oh, like who is ahead in terms of offense or defense?
Yeah.
I think offense kind of leads the way because defense is always reacting to the latest offense. Ooh, that's a hard question. That's one I wanted to research more, is to understand who's borrowing more techniques from the other. I think there's similar incentives on both sides for cheating and malware that are profit-driven to come up with new techniques. I don't have a good answer for who's better there, but I like the question. Yeah.
Yeah, for the example where you said there was like a cheat that intercepted the display hardware.
Yeah.
Is there an anti-cheat for that?
So is there an anti-cheat for the way that you can kind of combine the displays and show it on the monitor? No, because the only ways to detect it or to detect the actual plugs into the computer, because there's nothing really happening on the computer itself besides the hardware devices plugged into it. So the only way, like in that manner, to detect it is to detect like anomalous mouse movements, maybe with AI, and there are some projects with that, or to detect the card.
Could you use HTTP and kind of whitelist or blacklist providers?
For the cards?
If you've got the HTTP link to the computer, the combiner box, if it's got HTTP enabled, you should be able to find out the device ID on it, and you can, like say, only allow like monitors and TVs, and like if you don't know what the device is, you could at least flag it.
Or at least report it back. Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, there would be, I guess, a little bit of information sent over HDMI about what you're connecting to. Yeah. I didn't think about that.
Just moving services like GeForce Now are a kind of solution to cheating, or have there been methods where people are struggling to cheat while using a cloud service that they don't?
Sorry, what's the question exactly?
Services like GeForce Now, like video game streaming services, are they a solution in a sense, or have people still been able to find ways to cheat?
Is that like an anti-cheat?
No, game streaming, so like Google Stadia and remote game.
Oh yeah. So yeah, I think with remote, that would be one of the ways I think I could see you making it a little bit more secure of a competitive environment by using like things like Stadia, or like where you have to kind of connect into an external computer that you no longer have physical access and is a little bit more federated. And I mean, you will be playing with latency, but I think you can play in a more secure environment. Is that sort of what you're asking?
Yes.
Yeah, I'd like to be able to. I'd like to see that for more competitive games. It's just kind of a matter of like, is the networking going to be responsive enough? Yeah. Black shirt.
If the cheats rampant enough, why does it take so long to find for developers actually like today? Because Tarkov had the same issue for years.
Yeah, well, so cheats are very profit motivated, and game developers have much less resources and time, I think, compared to the cheaters. And the cheaters have much more incentive to have a working product and subscription. Cheating is a multi-billion-dollar industry. There's been examples of cheating rings that have been shut down in like China that have had like hundreds of millions of dollars that they've made from cheating. And it's a way for anyone in the world to make money by selling basically technical capabilities to people that are willing to pay. So I think just because there's so much profit and incentive to it, it makes it very hard for the game developer to go against basically the world as sometimes a small company. And then the off-the-shelf anti-cheat solutions are common enough that you build one bypass for it on some other game and you apply that to the new game that just comes out.
With Rocket League, there's a box mod where you can edit your card and stuff like that. And they are really good with keeping cheaters out of the actual ranked gameplay. How would they differentiate between how one thing is actually allowed and can handle memory and not?
I mean, so if it's a mod, it might be more friendly with the developers. They might advertise in some way to the developer or to the server that a mod is there, or disable it because they want to be in goodwill with the developer to have their mod. If you're not trying to be stealthy, then like it's much easier to detect it. Yeah.
Recently, I've heard that some competitive games are going to start requiring secure boot on the computer, like CPM,
Mm-hmm.
in order for the game to even run. What kind of benefit would secure boot on a computer even provide to preventing cheating?
Yeah, so the question is, what does secure boot do to prevent cheating on, what does an anti-cheat requiring secure boot do? Because anti-cheats are loaded nowadays at the kernel, the way to defeat that, besides like the hardware hacking and stuff, is to kind of load before the anti-cheat in the kernel itself. And the way running secure boot would allow you to have a full chain of trust from basically your BIOS to the operating system to the anti-cheat, to make sure that nothing was loaded in between that. Yeah.
Are there any of those, I know you talked about a lot about the similarities between malware development and cheat creation. Are there any notable differences between the development of those, or are they essentially the same but in just different packaging or different end results? And if there are any differences, what are they?
I mean, there are a lot of similarities, and there's a lot of actions malware takes. I've kind of keyed in on like the process injection pieces of it because that's a common way for malware to use it. And the similarities of trying to like avoid detection and obfuscate your code and such like that. I think also the outline of how you have like malware is also going to be kind of two pieces, much like the cheats are, where it's like it's information stealer, or in contrast to the like game cheats, you have the actual development of that, and then you have like your stealthy mechanisms and how you're running on the system and how you're doing things in a weird way to not get detected. That's the similarities that I'm keen in on there.
Sorry, to continue on with that, are there any notable differences that you noticed as you've delved into this? Or has it been like a one-to-one, oh, this is just straight the same thing, we're just doing games instead of the processes of information?
The main one I keyed in on was the hardware, like basically yeah, hardware being different for cheats. I actually don't have as much to say about the differences between them. Yeah, that was a good question. Goon, yes. Are we at time? Oh, 5 minutes? Okay. Any other questions? Yes?
The attack on other personnel in the group, networking would be different than like an aimbot or something like that. But there's like denial of service attack where pretty much other people can't play what you're playing, as opposed to just like using aimbots. Any differences in that malware?
That would be kind of like closer to like game exploitation in a way. So like if it's on a multiplayer game and you're connected from two different locations, is that what you're saying? Kind of like.
You can like denial of service on the client, and then they can just run around you free kills more or less, because everybody's like lagging out more or less.
Yeah, I mean, if you're talking about like kind of the Xbox Live, like DDoS and someone else's network and taking them down, I mean, that's not really game hacking, I guess. But if it is like an exploit that's through the game server, like you can find a way to send a bunch of data to the game server that sends it to the client and crashes them out, that'd be more like a game exploit. It would be a way to like deny of service another player on it.
And then it's like separate thing where it was within a game.
Yeah, if you're just DDoSing someone, usually yeah, it's not within a game. Although you might, the vulnerability itself might be is the game server leaking the IP address of the users that you're playing with, and that's very common in peer-to-peer. Actually, it's kind of required for peer-to-peer type games. Yeah.
What are your thoughts on, so just as a gamer, like perspective-wise, it seems like certain game companies have gone more aggressive on developers of game cheats. If you have no ethics or no morality or anything, you don't respect that, where's that more money? Defense doctor element.
I could hear the consequences.
I mean, yeah, I mean, the fact that anywhere in the world you can be creating cheats and the jurisdictions are very, like legally it's very hard to prevent that. If you're in the US and a lot of the game companies are in the US, then you can sue them and shut them down and use the legal system, but there's no world legal system. You have you might not even know where the developers are out of. The website can be kind of hosted anonymously, so they could be anywhere. It could be teams of cheaters from different countries. I mean, if you look at malware, those operations are often hard to shut down and discover, and that has the backing of multiple governments and law enforcement agencies in those governments. It's not really concerned to shut down cheaters for the most part. All right, thank you guys.